This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance on the Central Coast. We are joined today by Chris Ungar. He is president of the California School Boards Association. He's a member of the school board at San Luis Coastal Unified School District. And I remember, sir, in the summer of 2014, a thunderbolt hit the education community when a court in Los Angeles ruled that the principle of LIFO, last in, first out, where seniority trumps performance, was unconstitutional.
Yes, and that was the Vergara lawsuit.
Right.
It was an interesting finding. The Judge True found for the plaintiffs, and basically covers three things. The first is
LIFO.
last in, first out. The second, it said that the teacher probationary period of 2 years was too short. And then the third thing it said was it's too difficult to fire bad teachers.
It's all connected.
It is all connected.
It all has to do with
Absolutely.
termination.
Yes.
Is the bottom line. How
Right.
do we terminate teachers in the state of California? And I must say, in the background of this, and part of the reason why this was so much in the news, is in the Los Angeles region there was tremendous coverage about an incident at Miramonte Elementary School where, and forgive me audience, where a teacher was serving students male fluids on a spoon.
Yes, absolutely.
And
very sick stuff.
And what happened to him was he received a 25-year prison sentence and a financial settlement of tens of thousands from the LAUSD.
Yeah, and it is, certainly that is the most extreme case, but there are other cases where teachers, for whatever reason, probably shouldn't be in classrooms, and it can be very difficult and very costly for a school district to let them go. So it takes time and it takes money. So so that was part of the impetus of this. But a lot of the impetus of this was really what you started out with, was that last in, first out.
Right.
Because what the judge found was some of the younger, more qualified teachers were having to be let go.
Right.
And other more experienced teachers were staying. And then it also had to do with, as there are layoffs, teachers are placed in different schools. And so were teachers of less competency being placed in schools where the children had more needs, and where they clearly had a need for strong teaching.
And on top of that, because of last in, first out, a lot of the schools that were more challenged had newer teachers, because teachers didn't necessarily want to teach there.
Exactly.
And so those schools had greater turnover. The reason we're discussing this today is this case was heard in the Court of Appeal.
Yes.
And so obviously at this stage we don't know the result of it. What we do know, though, is that there were some small legislative fixes as a result of Miramonte and the Vergara decision, where there can be a more rapid termination for egregious conduct, such as the gentleman who served male fluids. I don't need to say any more about that. But that being said, it is still very difficult to terminate a teacher. I will say this, and I honor our teachers. I have an 8th grader and a 6th grader, and God bless them. It is interesting, you know, if you talk to someone who knew nothing about our education system and said, you know, there's a profession where after 2 years you get lifetime tenure. That seems pretty rapid. I mean, essentially that means at the age of, let's say, 25, you have a job for life. You graduate from college at 22, you get your master's at 23. By 25, you got a job for life.
Right. And I guess, first thing, there is a misconception, though. Tenure, as we know it in California public education, isn't the same as tenure in a university. So first of all, in public education, there is no such thing as academic freedom. And so, you know, tenure was to protect college professors with, you know, giving them the ability for academic freedom. We don't have academic freedom in our public schools. That said, what really happens is teachers can be fired, but they have extensive due process rights. And it's the due process rights that become very difficult. It becomes a huge hurdle for a district to get over if they want to let the teacher go.
Let's face it. Democrats and Republicans, not necessarily elected, but those that may be voters, they're queasy about that tenure system.
Oh, yeah.
They're very queasy. And, sir, I can easily envision an initiative being circulated that would eliminate tenure completely. And this blue state, I believe, would pass it overwhelmingly.
You know, I don't disagree with you. Depending on what happens with this lawsuit and the appeal of this lawsuit, certainly there could be an initiative to address teacher tenure. It's happened in the past. I think it's actually happened in the past. It did not pass.
Right, that's true. Has the CSBA taken a position?
We have supported the plaintiffs on Vergara. We believe those are issues that should be looked at.
That's remarkable.
We filed an amicus brief. Now, the Court of Appeals apparently during their hearing seemed to feel that Judge True's findings were not well crafted.
Interesting.
And it looks, the opinions I've read make it sound like it would be returned to the Superior Court for further hearing. Does there still need to be legislative action? I would think so. I think that the legislator is still paying attention to this, and the CTA is obviously paying attention to this.
The California Teachers Association is very strong. They have vigorously opposed the Vergara decision.
Yes.
Are they doing that at their own peril?
You know, that's a decision. They're going to have to make. I suspect that the harder they fight this, and when these cases of incompetent teachers come up, there is going to be a public backlash. So, does there need to be reform? Absolutely. What will that reform look like? I don't know. And I guess it could be less strict if it's just the legislature, or more prescriptive if we see an initiative.
I want to talk about another lawsuit, and this lawsuit is called Frederick's.
Yes.
Speaking
of teachers unions, right?
It is grown out of the California Teachers Association action. And this is a little inside baseball, but essentially what the plaintiffs are saying here is that the requirement that a teacher pay into the union is unconstitutional. It violates free speech rights.
Exactly. Yes, it's a free speech.
And
it's a free speech lawsuit.
What we know is that there was a view that the plaintiffs were going to likely be victorious on a 5-4 decision, with the conservative majority ruling against forced agency fees. But Mr. Scalia tragically passed away.
Yes. It's an interesting lawsuit because what it said was that agency fee payers, these are people that are not members of the union.
Well, they're non-members.
They are non-members of the union, but they're paying for the privilege of the union, of the collective bargaining agent, bargaining for their contract under which they fall.
A teacher does not have to be a member of the union.
That's correct.
But they have to pay into at least a portion of union expenses to cover collective bargaining fees.
That's the idea behind an agency fee. That's exactly right.
So what would happen? I mean, could the CTA then say, okay, if they lose Frederick's, okay, we're going to bargain for our friends, our people who pay in, and then you're going to have your own negotiation?
You know, I think that's an open question. It's really interesting because there are a few districts in California, Clovis, for example, that doesn't have a union as their collective bargaining agent.
What do they have? Nothing?
They have essentially a group of teachers that bargains for all the rest of the teachers that's not union represented. So this is going to be an interesting challenge because not only is it the Teachers Association, it's all public employee unions in California.
There's a lot of fear surrounding this.
The interesting claim on this that I thought was quite interesting was that the sheer fact of negotiations for public monies, if I'm in opposition to that, means that my speech rights have been...
You'll come back. He is Chris Ungar. My name is Brad Pomerance. This is Charter Local Edition.